Good morning, everybody. Chief Patrol Agent Ryan Landrum here at the U.S. Border Patrol Academy, coming to you with another What's Important Now podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, Kathleen Scudder, the Executive Director for the Mission Support Directorate at U.S. Border Patrol Headquarters in Washington, D.C. XD Scudder, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm really excited to dig into the history that is Kathleen Scudder. We were talking a little bit this morning, and this is exciting for me because you've pretty much done it all. And you have a tremendous amount of experience and a wealth of knowledge that I think the audience will really get a lot out of. But I want to start off in September of 1996. You EOD'd at the Nogales station in the Tucson sector in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And I have to ask you, do you happen to remember your class chant?
I do. 322 motivated, dedicated tri-state crew.
All right. Tri-state meaning?
Went to 3 different states.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. The all Southwest border at the time, right? There was a brief time in our history of the U.S. Border Patrol. We started sending some folks to the northern border. That came much later than all of us. But it has been tradition and practice even today that we send all the folks that graduate the U.S. Border Patrol Academy directly to the Southwest border.
Correct.
Excellent. So tell me about Nogales in 1996.
It was very busy in 1996. The traffic was shifting from San Diego, California, over to Nogales. At that time, when I EOD'd, the station was maybe like 100 people, and it quickly grew to over 500. We started out in a little gas station on one of the main roads down there in Nogales, and we had one big cell and one small cell for like the really bad guys. Yeah. But just it was very small. We were using typewriters. To do 213s. We had the carbon copied 213s still back then, but it was a lot of fun, a lot of opportunity, great time.
So you talk about cells. This is a short-term detention, right? And characterize for me the volume of apprehensions at the time against the one big cell and the one little cell. Sure. Was that adequate?
No, absolutely not. We were catching probably 1,500 people a day.
A day,
yeah, just at Nogales Station.
Right.
So it was crazy back then.
Excellent. A lot of Nogales, I think right now, I'd have to check the math, but it's probably the largest station in the Border Patrol.
I think they're on par with McAllen.
McAllen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Both very very large stations. So when you start off, 20 plus 5 years ago or so, you're at 100, and it's probably 400 or 500, 600 more than that right now. Yeah. So have you been back? I
have been back a couple times. A couple of years ago, went out there for Memorial, and the station itself really hasn't changed that much, but the AOR has changed a lot. You want to talk about the memorial? The what? The memorial? Yeah. So I had a classmate who was killed in the line of duty June 3rd, 1998, Alex Kirpnick. He was an immigrant from the Eastern Bloc. He immigrated to the United States, and his family lived in L.A. Yeah. And, he was the only son. He had a sister. But he was killed in Potrero Canyon. He was shot in the head by drug smugglers. Mm-hmm. And he died on the way to the hospital that night. So we got together for the 20-year memorial of his passing almost, I guess it's 4 years ago now, because his 25th is coming up next year. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of classmates and I worked with Tucson Sector to put something together. Years prior, an agent's son had built a memorial for Alex at the place where he was killed in the canyon for his Eagle Scout project. So that has been in place there. It's got the Star of David, and then it's just, it's a nice stone memorial with a plaque on it and everything. So we kind of rededicated at that point in time. A lot of people were in attendance. The U.S. attorneys who prosecuted his shooters were in attendance. The chief of the Border Patrol was in attendance for Tucson Sector at the time, and it was a really great memorial. A lot of people showed up. A lot of classmates who are no longer with the Border Patrol. Right. Alex had an imprint and an impression on every single one of us. Yeah, this is it's a tragic story, but it's also kind of personifies who we are. Absolutely. Right? So it's a classmate that makes it even closer to home. But I would argue that particular memorial is maybe one of the best ones
that we have in the Border Patrol. And thanks for sharing the genesis of how that particular memorial came about. I don't think many people know that, but it's a fantastic memorial, and I think maybe you might hear this in the kind of line of duty deaths, whether it's military or whether it's law enforcement. We kind of use this saying of "we never forget," right? But this is an illustration that we truly never forget.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it's part of the fabric of who we are. It's family. And then the other piece that I really appreciate about this is he's an immigrant from the Eastern Bloc, right? We have such a diverse workforce. Yes. It is incredible, and they're willing to immigrate to this country
and then protect our borders.
And give their lives for it.
Yeah.
That is an amazing story. Amazing story. So you do time in Nogales, and then you go up to 2004. You transfer up to the Erie, Pennsylvania station. How was that?
So we opened that station.
Yeah.
It was after 9/11. They were beefing up the northern border. My mom had passed. Ryan and I were looking for something different. And so we went up to the northern border and we opened this little station. And there's a PIC, 2 supervisors, and 3 agents.
Wow.
5 of us, 6 of us counting the PIC. The 2 supervisors are my husband and I.
Right.
And then the PIC is a gentleman from Buffalo sector. And we're in the ferry boat terminal in Erie, Pennsylvania, which never opened up to ferry boats. But it worked for us for the time being. But that ended up being a lot of working with state and locals, translating. You would be surprised the number of people that transit I-90 through the upstate areas and into New York, and how many of them are either overstays or illegal. Just to start with, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely a huge change from Nogales.
No doubt.
Huge change.
No doubt.
Yeah.
You mentioned Ryan, and obviously if you go back, or if you're a listener of the podcast, Chief Scudder, Ryan Scudder, acting Executive Assistant Commissioner for Enterprise Services, met your husband, right? And I do want to get into that in a little bit. I think there's also a story to tell there, just about going back to legacy and family, being able to lead people and lead change in this organization while also maintaining a healthy relationship, raise kids, those types of things. I think it's a great story for people to hear as well. So you guys are the supervisors at Erie, Pennsylvania, and then you get an opportunity to go to headquarters. Clearly, you didn't know what you were getting into. And you become an ops officer at headquarters in the Southwest Border Division. These divisions, and as you know, the directorates change names over time.
Right.
But at the time, you're an ops officer in Southwest Border Division. How was that?
It was interesting. It was definitely something new and different, and you hear about headquarters and you think it's one thing. As an ops officer, I was doing, like putting together the incident reports for the 24-hour period, prior for the chief, and I had an opportunity to become an adjutant at that time as well. So I was the adjutant to the Southwest Border Chief. It was Chief Self at the time, and that helped to really give me some exposure and experience you get to sit in the room and be a fly on the wall and really hear how things work. So that was a great opportunity.
Yeah, I share that same experience. When I was at headquarters, I got to be the adjutant for Chief Mike Fisher at the time. And you're right, like you're not a decision maker, you're not calling any shots, but you become broader and deeper on how the sausage is made, if you will, that it eventually informs how you lead today. Maybe you take some good, you take some bad, or leave the bad, but you are observing and absorbing everything you possibly can that later on kind of informs who you are as a leader.
Right. And that was at the beginning of us using adjutants. I was like one of the first 3 or 4, I think.
How many females were at headquarters at the time?
I think I was the only, no, there were 2 of us in Southwest Border Division.
Yeah.
Myself and Rebecca Salazar.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. Executive Director for Privacy and Diversity right now. Excellent. So you are able to do that, and within that tenure at headquarters, when you're an ops officer, you promote to an A chief. Where was that at?
It was in Southwest Border Division also, and then I kind of got an opportunity at that point to take a detail to DHS.
Okay.
And I worked in their operational planning as a CBP liaison. Yeah. So that was kind of at the point I think that my career really started to take off.
For sure.
with those opportunities. So I spent 18 months over there.
That's awesome. I talk about this, whether it's mentorship opportunities or generally in conversations. I think it's super important that if you aspire to be a executive leader in this organization, you need to have done something outside of this organization, right? You can be a board patrol agent your entire career. In fact, I think I talked with Ryan about this as well because he's done some similar stuff. But just kind of characterize how you think you are a better leader today because you stepped out of your comfort zone, quite frankly, and went to this, brand new DHS thing. Where was this at the NAC at the time? The Nebraska Avenue complex,
yes.
Right? So it's not even the big, beautiful building at St. Elizabeth's that it is right now. It's in the NAC that we refer to.
But they did have free parking.
Oh, wow.
So that was very nice.
That is free parking in the National Capital Region is quite the perk, for sure.
It was.
So tell me how do you think it made you a better leader today to step out of your comfort zone then?
Yeah. So first, it gave me an opportunity to teach other people about the Border Patrol and what we're really like and kind of represent the organization in the way I want it to be represented, right? But it also helped me to learn how everybody else functions and where we fit in and how those things feed into the big Homeland Security sort of machine, right? And I think it definitely made me more well-informed, more patient, to hear other perspectives, to learn other perspectives, and to understand where they're coming from. So we had people from ICE, from emergency management, other DHS offices, CIS. I mean, you name the DHS gambit. We're part of these planning teams. And we were working on like national sort of big event kind of plans, like nuclear response and things like that. So that was another thing that was very interesting and out of my scope that I had done anything related to up to that point. Yeah,
that's awesome. So contextually, like for the audience, DHS, huge organization, hundreds of thousands of people, right? And it's a brand new learning organization. This thing's just coming on, and then we have CBP, another huge organization. This is cascading downwards in terms of scope, to your point. And then within CBP, we have the U.S. Border Patrol, right? So to say that you came from the U.S. Border Patrol, 5 layers down from DHS, if you will, to go inform. And really, I think the part that I like the most about it is you're telling our story, right? So you're working really, and you're telling it both verbally, right? But you're also telling it through your hard work, right? You're like, hey, Border Patrol must have some really capable folks that can come in here and be broader and be deeper on all the topics that relate to defending the homeland generally, not just the border. Speaks volumes to the men and women that we actually have working for us, as well as their willingness and ability to go represent who we are in really, really positive ways in much bigger arenas, if you will.
And during that time, I'm learning a whole new skill set.
Right.
I'm learning how to do like federal level planning,
right?
Which is, as you know, a very intricate process, right? And I had no idea, as a young Border Patrol agent graduating the academy, that I would be involved in anything like that. Right. Or even have an opportunity to. I just wanted to be a law enforcement officer.
I tell that story so much. Like, if you just go work really hard and get to know your job as a Border Patrol agent, the world, literally the world, opens up to you. We have international affairs. We have people all over the world, Border Patrol agents, doing, pushing our borders out from the southwest border, the northern border. We have people at the Department of Homeland Security. We have people in multiple different agencies doing great work on our behalf to then tie it back down into how do we use these opportunities to better secure the border, right?
There's something for everyone.
Everyone. It is special ops. We talk about this all the time. A lot of folks that come through here want to be special operators. Mm-hmm. We have that as well, right? All the things that people want to do, you can do it. But it first starts with being a good teammate as a Border Patrol agent and learning your job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So from there, we like to affectionately call it, you get out of jail free, right? You get your first pass out of headquarters, and you go down to beautiful South Texas. Yes. Right. In 2010, you become a field operations supervisor at the McAllen Station. This is, we kind of coined this as an FOS. We no longer have that position. It has since become the watch commander position at a higher grade. So you're a GS-13 FOS, which is now the GS-14 watch commander. But you did some time in Nogales, you go up to Pennsylvania, hit headquarters, and then you go down to a whole new ball game in South Texas. And by the way, in 2010, it was getting a little sporty in South Texas. Tell me about that, especially that station.
I think maybe the work is following me, but in 2010, McAllen was starting to get hit with the unaccompanied juvenile crisis.
Yeah.
And it kind of really hit ahead in 2012.
Right.
But when I was in RGV sector, if you look at my resume, it really looks like I can't hold a job. So I did the FOS position for a year, and then they found out that I had some planning background, so they pulled me up to Intel, and I did an SOS position there. But back to the FOS position, it was really hard for me to decide to move on from that because I was having fun again.
Yeah.
You know, you get out of headquarters, you're like, oh yeah, the field, that's the best time in your whole career you spend, I think, is the field work. And I'm getting to like work with people again, and we're catching, you know, it was great. So it was a really hard decision to make that next step. But I think every step and decision you make provides different and new opportunities. Right. So it was the right thing to do to step into that SOS position.
The field operations supervisor, now the watch commander, is a position where I've kind of coined it as the patrol agent in charge of a unit, a patrol group, right? So if a station has 3, maybe 4 patrol groups, a day shift patrol group, a swing shift or an evening shift patrol group, and a midnight shift patrol group, you're the person that the actual patrol agent in charge trusts to, number one, enact the vision of the patrol agent in charge, but also take care of the people. Like you actually have a finger on the pulse of the people, and the mission is really important, right? But that watch commander really has an opportunity to impact the environment for the people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's a great position, and you probably, to your point, you start to probably realize that maybe your time in these types of positions is coming to an end. So you're enjoying every last second of it.
Right.
You know you're going to ascend to levels of greater responsibility, probably sooner rather than later. Right. So I had the same thoughts, and I tell the same story about being a PIC. Yeah. Like I kind of really it was hard to walk away from that job because at that point it's like, all right,
it's the best job in the patrol.
It's the best job in the patrol.
Yeah.
But it's like that's the last time you had that kind of connectivity with our workforce.
Yes.
At that point you start getting second, third, 4 layers, if you will, removed. And this is why we do the job, the mission, and the people. And if you have the sense enough to understand that you're probably not long for that job, it starts to make those things really hard to walk away from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard for the people to know that you're not going to be there.
Oh, yeah. And maybe some enjoy it.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about you. I believe while you're in RGV, you become the Chief of Staff for the Corpus Christi Regional Coordination Mechanism, which we call the RECOM, or called the RECOM at the time. What is the RECOM? What does the Chief of Staff of the RECOM do, and what came out of that?
So the Regional Coordinating Mechanisms were a DHS initiative to integrate maritime operations. Yeah. So it was U.S. Coast Guard, HSI, and CBP. Okay. And that's everything in CBP, Border Patrol, Air Marine, OFO. Mm-hmm. So I was charged as the Chief of Staff, and it's not an official title position. Right. I was an assistant chief, or actually I think I was still SOS and Intel at the time when I took that position. And I was charged with leading the development of the Corpus Christi RECOM. Mm-hmm. So that meant that I had to wrangle all of these type A personalities, all but one female, one other female from OFO. So I had AMO, U.S. Coast Guard, and then the other HSI and the other parts of CBP. Now, you've got operators and you've got HSI, investigators. So you can understand kind of the rub there. Right. Particularly, this was developed to share information. Right. And then develop cases together and address threats together. The first thing we did was share each other's schedules. Very simple. When are you going to be out there? Yeah. Let's cover, let's develop this together and work the threat, as an entity.
Yeah. So what I like about this, the story that it tells me is that Corpus Christi, RECOM, South Texas, if I'm looking at it through a Border Patrol lens, why do we care about the water? we kind of have a land border issue.
Exactly.
Right?
We do, but in
But-
South Texas and California, we also have a maritime mission.
Right.
So they land on the beaches,
Right.
dope washes up on the beaches, all kinds of, it's not just a land border threat.
Kind of goes back to our point about if you want to do it, it's out there for you. I mean, I guarantee you in 1996, as you're coming on board with No Gala Station, you never thought you'd be in Corpus Christi, Texas, which is
I probably had never even heard of it.
probably not. Which
I hadn't
which
heard
is
of
unfortunate
Nogales,
because
so.
this is South Texas. This is one of those things. Yeah. But the point is like, man, the threats that are out there and the threats that we address are significant. It may sound like dope, and it may sound like boats full of migrants, washing ashore, that kind of thing. But you never know who's on those things. The border at the time is porous, right? So why would the adversary choose to put somebody in a boat and try and launch them out into the water and back up to up the coast? Those things have to be taken very seriously.
We know we're being effective on the land border when we start to see more activity in the maritime arena because it is more expensive.
Right.
It's more expensive for the smuggler as well, for the syndicates and all the organizations. But that's what we're thinking about when we're out there and we're preparing against them. Right? Is how do we affect them negatively so it costs them more money to operate, and then we have to be prepared for where they're going to go next.
That's right. So as a result of that work, you win or you're awarded the Secretary or the S1 Silver Medal for Leadership. What is that?
I think it's an award that they give to you when you're awesome.
Fair enough. Moving on.
Well, honestly, though, Coast Guard put me in for that award.
Oh, wow.
They really appreciated, I guess, the partnerships and the leadership that we had developed with their folks. The captain of the Corpus Christi Coast Guard, I don't know if it's a sector or a station in Corpus Christi, but he was very, very appreciative of, just the Board of Patrol coming in and bringing everyone together. And they didn't really want to lead it.
Yeah.
It's just I didn't want to lead it, so as is typical for the Board of Patrol, we're like, okay, we'll take it and we'll make it good, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting because it's very easy for us in let's call it 2023, we're coming up on 2023 to put that lens over things like coordination. So fast forward 13 years, we probably do it a little better than we did in 2010. So again, this is a 7-year-old organization now, DHS at the time. So it's important to look at 2010 through the lens of 2010, right? So the when we talk about hurting the cats, if you will, that was a much taller order back then than it is today.
Absolutely. People were still very resistant to even identifying the DHS, much less being the leader for an integration.
Yeah.
I mean, that word has become like this dirty word at this point, right? Yeah. No more integration. Yeah.
You talk about generational changes and 20-year type changes. I think DHS is established in 2003. We're coming up on 20 years. Like I said, things are a little more mature than they were in 2010. So you're half a generation into forcing the type of change that people are generally opposed to. So no wonder that you should win a medal or a leadership award from the Secretary's office. And even better that another organization within that stream, if you will, had the foresight to recognize your efforts then. So congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you. They were great partners.
Awesome. So you were awarded after the recon with an Assistant Chief Patrol Agent. That's an ACPA at the Rio Grande Valley headquarters. Yeah. What were you in charge of there? I'm going to guess planning.
Well, some of it was planning, but it was... So after the recon success, my success with the recon specifically, I was asked to lead the McAllen area team for the South Texas campaign, which was yet another DHS initiative for integration.
Yeah.
It started in just South Texas, and then it went across the whole of the border at some point and turned into Joint Task Force West. Right. But South Texas campaign was the very first initiative, and it was a little bit smaller, and it was mostly just CBP. Right. Had some Coast Guard worked into it and the other federal investigative entities. But I was told at the time, you're good at building things. We want you to lead this thing, come in, take over this team. They're kind of fledgling a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's what I was asked to do.
Awesome. This is actually where our paths first crossed. I was on the STC, the South Texas Campaign kind of leadership team, running comms for then Director Robert Harris.
Yeah.
And you're right, the requirement for leadership in the RGV team specifically was high, and because quite frankly, that's where most of the traffic that we were addressing originated from. So it was an easy transition from the recom into STC.
I already knew the partners.
Right. Yeah, it made the flywheel go faster for the greater STC for sure, because we were concentrating very heavily in RGV, specifically even RGC, Rio Grande City Station. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So from there, you get an opportunity to go back to a station, right, where we all love to be, and this is as a deputy patrol agent in charge, back at the McAllen Station.
Right.
How was that time?
That was probably one of the hardest positions that, for personally and mentally and just stress-wise,
mm-hmm.
that I've done in my career at that time.
Anyway.
And going in there the first day, no lie, the first day on the job, OSHA's at the front door. You see detention facilities now and these big CPCs, and they're all clean and the air is nice. Well, McAllen Station detention facility at the time, the air conditioning system was not ever designed to handle the number of people that were coming into that facility and the amount of dirt and just everything that was in the air. And, so someone called OSHA. So my initiation as a deputy patrol agent in charge of the station was OSHA, dressed up like they're the FBI on a raid, OSHA, big black hat, at the front door that morning. I'm like, well, come on in, let's talk.
That's true.
But my initial first sort of effort there as DPAC was to engage the union.
Yeah.
And build a better relationship with the union and just have conversations so that everything wasn't a fight, or they're, pushing our buttons just to get attention. Like, let's address these things as low level as possible. Talk to me. Come talk to me. We will handle it.
Right. It's an illustration of the tectonic shift that was going on in our organization at the time. I, again, remember 2010. This is really when the surge of migration starts to really hit, and we had predicted this happening a couple years prior, so we started trying to beef up in terms of personnel South Texas. But to your point, the other logistics tail lagged pretty significantly, so we were detaining far more people than we ever had, ever, and our stations, our facilities were never built for that, ever.
They would call the fire marshal. He's like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
I can't close down a federal facility.
Right.
Yeah, so we started working towards, the first kind of central processing center at that time.
Yeah. So this is where, central processing, for context, is a dedicated facility for just basically processing short-term detention and then, processing out to an appropriate location, whether it be repatriation, some HHS facility if you're a child, Health and Human Services.
Hit hard with unaccompanied juveniles at that time. That means no parent, no guardian. I mean, as young as 1 year old.
Right.
Sometimes. And so, like, how do we even deal with this?
Yeah.
We don't have, if you put a female in a cell, you can put no one else in that cell.
That's right.
You put a child in another cell, you could put no one else in that cell.
Right.
So you're limiting your space every time you have a different demographic.
Yeah, so you're really on the ground floor of maturing the way in which we house, care for, feed the migrants.
Contracts.
Yeah, this is,
Brand new at that time.
Folks that are experienced today have, largely you and the team in RGV to thank. And quite frankly, we still use RGV as the model for how business should be done.
They have really figured it out.
Right. Yeah, out of necessity.
Yes, exactly.
They've had to figure it out, and they have. And we go along. And the good thing, I think, about RGV is it's not necessarily bound, like some other sectors, like Tucson, for example, by some case law, right? So we do our best to understand the spirit of those laws as it relates to things like Tucson, apply them in other places, and priority number one for us as it relates to short-term detention is throughput of children, right? It's an unfortunate unfortunate reality, but we definitely prioritize their care and their movement so that we don't get looked at in other ways. It's just the right thing to do. There's nothing, they're victims here. Right?
And at that time, Jay Johnson was the secretary of DHS, and I remember working a Mother's Day. He wanted to come down and bring his wife and go on a tour, and so we did that. And then they finally declared a humanitarian emergency, and we started getting some help from FEMA and some attention and doctors from the Coast Guard and Public Health Service and all those types of things. So it was a good thing to have to work on a Mother's Day to finally get some relief.
Yeah, well, it's again, I want to talk about this, but sacrifice, right? We talk about the mission and the people, but you're also a parent, right? So you understand that sometimes the mission has to come first. It's still a testament to your and Chief Scudder's ability to raise children, but that's hard.
Yeah.
That is hard.
It's hard to miss the first of anything.
Yeah.
But my attitude to that has always been, I will have to sacrifice one thing or another because there's no such thing as balance.
Yeah.
There really isn't. And my daughter, thankfully, was young and doesn't remember a lot of things that I remember I missed.
Right.
And then I was able to be there for all the high school stuff.
Yeah.
95% of it.
Right.
But she really, I don't know if she even really grasps to this day sort of the immense pressure and effect that it has had on our dad and I, because we've kind of kept her separate from that, know.
It's a good story for, if you do aspire to do, executive leadership responsibility or jobs in this organization, there's a cost. There's absolutely a cost.
You absolutely need to have a good partner, a good support system. He and I did it ourselves. We didn't have family. Very early on, when our daughter was young, very young, we cared for all of our parents. They all lived with us. It was a wheelchair central. All three of them were in wheelchairs at one point. So we not only did we take, and I think that's something that this generation too is going to face. It's that sandwich generation, right? You're raising kids and taking care of ailing parents at the same time. And it's really, really challenging.
Yeah, you do some great work over time as it relates to this, and I definitely want to talk to that. So feel free to inject where that comes up appropriately. But this is something that became near and dear to your heart, and with a strong understanding that sacrifices need to be made, but at the same time, the organization has a responsibility to also take care of its people when they have the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So while you're in RGV, is this where you go to Big Bend?
No.
So you go to San Diego next?
Yes.
Great. So you head over to, you finish up in McAllen, and you head to San Diego as the patrol agent in charge of...
No, I went there as an assistant chief with the LER.
Oh, okay, great. And how was that?
Very challenging. Very, very challenging. Dealing, honestly, with the union all the time can be very, very stressful, very kind of a negative environment a lot of the time when you're dealing with labor-employee relations. You're dealing with discipline. You kind of see the worst part of the patrol, I guess, if you will.
Yep.
But I learned a lot, and I think it really helped prepare me for future positions, just having that experience and understanding what it takes and the things you're supposed to do when you have a disciplinary problem and so on and so forth, how to talk to people, how to ask people what's going on, because typically discipline doesn't happen because someone just feels like doing the wrong thing that day. There's always an added circumstance. Yeah.
I think it's interesting. We talked about the union a couple times, and I would be willing to bet that your relationship with the union today is probably better and far different than it was, say, in San Diego or RGV, those types of places, just because you kind of grow to have an appreciation for what they try and achieve for the workforce. But you're also entering into these positions, and quite frankly, nobody's ever really ready for the next position. Like, you just got to get thrust in a lot of fires. You're lucky if you have, like, hey, I'm really, really ready for whatever comes next. Most of the time, it's we're all learning together, right?
Absolutely.
So would you say that's probably true? Like you have a different understanding, different appreciation for what they do today?
I definitely, the experiences I had with the union in RGV, San Diego, Big Bend in particular, I had a very good relationship with them. I think that they saw me as fair.
Yeah.
And that's really all I would ask for.
Yeah. Both sides.
Yeah.
Right. And I that's my experience too. Dealing with the union as a patrol agent in charge, much different than dealing with the union as a chief right now.
Yeah.
I think probably to your experiences, it's just about building relationships, right? Communication, listening, and honesty, trust, and fairness.
Absolutely.
Right. It is what it is at this point. So you're at LER as an A chief. What comes after that?
After that, I get another opportunity to be chief of staff for the Joint Task Force West California Corridor. So
that's an easy one.
Yeah. But yeah, so here we're standing up this thing. Can you please come and lead it? Yes, absolutely, I'll do it. I've got this at this point.
Right. Now you're actually prepared.
Now I'm prepared. I've done this before.
7 jobs later, you're entering.
Commander Harris is still the guy in charge,
That's
so
right.
I know what he wants, what he expects.
Right.
And we move forward, and we, with that, and it gets to a point where I'm ready to leave, and they're ready to let someone else jump in and take the realm. And then at that point, during that same time, I was the division chief for law enforcement programs in San Diego sector, so I'm dual hatting. So I'm pretty busy.
Yes, sir.
And I like being busy.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like, okay, I'd spend half my day doing JTF West and half my day doing programs. And then from there, I went to the PIC of Imperial Beach.
Yeah. So I want to circle back just for a minute. So you're dual hatting. You're very busy. Your daughter's older.
My daughter's older.
How's that going?
It's good. She is at that point in 8th grade, going into high school, and she's a smart kid, like intelligent, very, very intelligent. She gets that from her father.
Okay.
I'm perfectly fine with admitting that. They are the easy kind of smart that really irritates me because I have to study.
Yeah.
But she's doing well. She's always been a good student. Always liked school, never a problem child. We got really lucky, to be honest. I base it completely on luck.
Right.
She's just a good kid.
These are influential years, though. Like
Yes.
you want to, like San Diego might be home for a minute.
It's going to be home because we promised her we would not move her until she graduated high school. We would not move again.
But it doesn't come at no cost.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
She had some challenges socially, connecting with people because she thought, well, I'm just going to move again.
Right.
So she had some difficult, like, preteen years.
Right.
And
I think Chief Scudder, Ryan Scudder, even goes, because he gets promoted, he even slides over where,
he slides over to El Centro at this time.
Right. Because you guys are committed.
We're committed. We're not leaving. We're not pulling our kid out of school.
Right.
And so you forgo opportunities at that time, too. So this is the point in my career where I'm sacrificing potential promotions.
Sure.
I don't know if I would have gotten them, but I'm in a point where I'm not willing to move at this point. I promised my kid that we're not going to pull her out of high school. And we had that specific conversation. We are not going to move you. You can make friends. You're not going to have to leave. So
I keep going back to the story because I think it's important. You can still aspire to do upper level leadership work in this organization. And it can even come at potential cost, to your point, like maybe it cost me jobs, maybe it didn't. But at the same time, it's a snapshot in time.
Right.
You had the ability to maintain great relationships with the people that are leading in San Diego. You just work really, really hard, kind of going back to that paradigm of being a good border patrol agent first.
Right.
You own the job you're doing,
right?
You're a patrol agent in charge now. Like, you can't learn that job in a year anyway. Like, it's really good to be a patrol agent in charge. Again, the best job in the entire Border Patrol. Like, people want to maximize that time. Yeah. So it's a perfect kind of intersection with a great job at a fantastic station.
Well, absolutely. Who doesn't want to be on the beach?
Yeah, this is...
How many opportunities do you have in the Border Patrol to be on the beach? Like the literal beach.
Yeah, this is that iconic, station, or that iconic picture people see of the water, and kind of like the barrier or the fence, whatever you want to call it, goes out into the water a bit. This is the Imperial Beach Station, and that's what you're in charge of.
Absolutely.
And there's still things to do. It's not a boring station by any stretch of the imagination. There's plenty of work.
Yeah, there is. But at first, so I was very fortunate to walk into a station that was well managed and taken care of before I got there.
Great.
And I give credit to the prior PIC because he really did, a great job.
Yeah.
So I was honestly a little bored at first.
Okay.
Because I'm coming from doing 2 jobs, and I'm like, well, there's no problems to solve here. What do I do? I don't. And one of the watch commanders, the first thing he asked me is, well, what are you going to change here? I'm like, wow. Because, they have this view of leaders that come in and they want to change something to get some resume fodder or make an impact, and then they fly away, right? I'm like, well, I don't know. If nothing needs changing, then I won't change anything.
Right.
And we actually became very good friends.
Awesome.
Before he retired. But, that's kind of the challenges that leaders face when they move into positions. And that position sometimes is seen from the troops as a revolving door.
For sure.
And they like consistency.
Yeah.
They like knowing what to expect when they come in. Then what is she going to change?
Yeah.
We just got settled.
You said it earlier, right? Like then you get a person like Kathy Scudder that comes in, probably not her last job.
Right, and they know
and
this.
they know that,
yeah.
Right? So that my guess is, when Ryan's the PIC of RGC, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not his last job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to your point, if nothing needs changing, then don't change it. Just improve on little things here and there, and you can continue to do great work. But this is an opportunity to build relationships. This is an opportunity to settle a family. Yeah, the fun things, right?
Yeah.
That connectivity. This is really the last time where you can have that connectivity. Right.
Absolutely. And we did some really, really good things with the community while I was there in IB. You got those opportunities for outreach. We did the Haunted Barn, which was a community event where we basically charged a can of food and we donated to the San Diego Food Bank. And the agents, so creative. Legit scary haunted house. And I was the flying witch.
Oh, well.
Take that for what it's
very out of character.
Very out of character, absolutely. But that was so much fun, and it really gave us an opportunity to get to know each other and also to do something for the community. And it was at a time where we could afford to do something like that with our staff and with our, that wasn't the case 2 years later.
Yeah. So, and I don't want to belabor this issue as a gender issue, but you're the first female PIC of IB. Not many female PICs generally in the patrol.
Sure.
Did you have to, balance anything there? Did you have to, or were you just accepted as one of the agents and you kind of just lead that way?
So I think sometimes you are, your reputation precedes you. But also I tend to have this poker face, we'll call it.
Fair enough.
For the
that's not what she calls it. But
and I remember the DPAC there was Donnie Fitch, and old patrol guy, right? Old board tacker.
Yeah.
Not that he was old. I don't mean that, but he'd been around a while. He went to mandatory. I will be honest. Donnie Fitch taught me how to be a PAIC.
That's awesome.
Awesome guy, great mentor. But he told me, I told everyone like, this is just a fake Kate.
Yeah.
Like she's really, down to earth. She's really, really good,
Yeah.
And so that meant a lot coming from, an old patrol kind of board tacker. Like, and the first time I ever talked to him, I think I offended him because he was coming, he handed me or something about a set of keys in the women's bathroom. I'm like, what are you doing in the women's bathroom? And he's like, I wasn't in the women's bathroom. But he ended up being a great friend and a great mentor. You can be mentored from your subordinates.
Yeah.
You have to respect the experience that they've had.
Yeah. That is such a great point. I think, sometimes folks are like, well, I'm the patrol agent in charge. I must know it all. Therefore, I can learn nothing from the people that
I am
work with
absolutely
me.
not the person who knows it all.
Well, it's a good story. Like you have to be open to the opportunity to consume knowledge at every turn, because you can learn something every single day. The day you stop, learning something is the day you should probably hang it up.
Yeah.
Right?
Or when you think you know it all.
Fair enough, right? So your PIC of IB, what comes next?
So the division chief of operations opens up. And my husband's already told me that is the worst job in the patrol. And I'm like, why would I want to do that? Mm-hmm. And the chief of the sector asked me if I'm going to put in. I'm like, I really like what I'm doing. I've got it made right now. I'm running my own station. I can go to all my daughter's events. Yeah. You know, I've had the conversation with the chief and deputy, like my kid is my priority. You know, she's a junior in high school at this time, I think, going into her senior year. And I'm going to be there for all her things. Mm-hmm. Like, this is going to take a back seat. And they're like, got it. We're behind you 100%. Now I know, and there'll be certain events where I have to show up, right, if there's a shooting or something like that. So I put in, and I think there were like 3 applicants. Wow. Because it's really expensive to live in San Diego, and that job sucks. Yeah. So fast forward, I get selected. And one day I go from being PIC of Imperial Beach on the very west side of the sector to the leader of all these Type A, all men, longtime San Diego agents, very connected to each other. I'm still an outsider. Right. I've been there 4.5 years. I didn't come up through San Diego, right? They've got every sector has their clique, right? So I've got to figure out, how do I lead these guys without being, overly demanding, or, I want them to come together as a team, right? I don't want to have to tell everybody everything to do, because that's not my leadership style, first of all. And also, they're not going to do it. Yeah. I've got to figure out a way to get them in my corner. And Chief, at that time, Chief Scott, had a lot of changes he wanted to make, and accountability was becoming a big factor. And I'm like, great, thanks, I'll do it. So there I am. And then what happens, I think I EOD'd in June or July, and then the mass migration starts. Yep. November 25th, 2018, we get hammered in San Diego sector. And it's on the news footage. You see, aliens come across, and they're taking down the fence in areas. Yes, San Diego probably had the most fortified, but there are areas that are 20, 30 years old. Right. This was prior to the 18-foot and 30-foot bollard and all that going in. Yeah. So they're just tearing it down, and we are overwhelmed. And San Diego hasn't seen activity like that since the 90s. Yeah. And they're used to kind of just doing their thing, and then it just goes to crap.
That is that's a huge inflection point. The irony here is, like, you're on the ground floor in 2010, right? You have these kind of mass migration events that, quite frankly, nobody was used to. This isn't happening in other places either. Right. It's just now happening for the first time.
RGV was the center of the universe for many years. Right. Yeah. But
at the same time, there were still no, like, inflection points where, like, 20,000 people came over that day. Like, that just wasn't
happening. Caravans.
There was no caravans. Right. There's no, what I'm trying to say here is there's no textbook for how to handle these things. Yeah, no. Right? No. But you've spent the last, at this point, 20 years of your career, 22 years or so of your career, building this acumen to lead, right? So you're not necessarily at the fence,
I was
pushing
not.
folks back, right? You have the understanding that, kind of the general on the battlefield, if you will, right? You step back and you're just leading as you're supposed to. So if you're down there getting caught up in the fray, who's leading? Right. And that's what you're doing. Right. Or not doing, I should say.
So I'll tell you who was down there. Was the chief and the deputy.
Right. Well, maybe they were down there because they had the confidence.
And I said, what are you two doing?
Yeah.
But they did. They responded just like any agent would, because we all come from that, right? So here's the scenario. We'd all come in on a Sunday because we knew the caravan was coming to prepare for this. And it hit while we were in the middle of planning. Yeah. And we're watching things happen. The commissioner is watching the RVSS cameras from Washington, D.C. as it's happening. Right. The Secretary of Homeland Security, the president, is watching it happen. And we're in the middle of the fight. Yeah. It was crazy.
So what'd you learn?
What did I learn?
What didn't you learn?
It was chaos. I learned that general sort of mentality is very, very important.
Yeah.
Because when you send all your troops to the battle line and they're getting just worn out and tired, and you keep sending more troops, what they really need is water.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't have everyone all at once.
Yeah.
You've got to prepare for the oncoming. Preparation is key. Had we not had the information ahead of time, we would not have been as prepared as we were.
Yeah.
They shut down San Ysidro Port of Entry, the busiest port of entry on the southwest border.
Right.
They shut it down. That is about the only thing that stopped it.
Yep.
It was unprecedented.
Yeah, we, a former chief of San Diego, chief of the patrol, Chief Fish used to say this all the time, good generals talk operations, great generals talk logistics.
Yeah. If we had not had any, and thankfully headquarters, helped in that vein as well at the time. Dusty Cottle was in charge of the planning element, and they had already detailed agents down to us. We, for once, were prepared ahead of time with extra manpower in those. Thank God, because I can't tell you what. I mean, we already shifted almost everybody west when that started happening. So what happens when you do that is you've got your eastern flanks completely exposed.
Right. This is all happening in the area where you were at as a PAC.
Correct.
Right? So the good thing is you have some subject matter expertise in the area as well. So logistics become a little easier to plan. You can start to say, hey, well, I've got the littorals there. Far eastern flank is, or far western flank is short.
Coast Guard's got a cutter
That's right.
sitting out there. We've developed these relationships ahead of time, which is key also. Don't wait until you're in the fight to meet the leader to the left or right.
Yeah.
You've got to develop those relationships ahead of time.
I love that because I did a podcast with Chief Robert Garcia, Chief Carl Landrum on the heels of the mass migration event in Del Rio. And literally one of the major takeaways largely learned from the 2018 event was, if relationships need to be built eventually, build them now.
Yesterday.
Right, that was almost central to the entire theme because you can't try and start meeting people that are integral to quelling whatever threat there is to respond to in real time. So I need to be able to pick up the phone and be able to say, "Hey, Kathy, right? I'm on a first name basis, and you're gonna,
absolutely,
I got you." That type of thing.
We've trained together. We've talked. We've had coffee multiple times.
Right.
Not just to go to your office. Hi, how are you doing? This is what I do. It's a legit relationship, and this leads into things like protests.
Oh yeah.
And organized. We're going to cross the line kind of things, and people to know they're going to get arrested. Well, we had to have a relationship with the Park Service.
Yeah.
The state and locals too ahead of time. So.
It's about this. It's interesting. We talk about division chiefs, and you're saying, well, now you're the leader of all these Type A personalities or the PAICs, and you can probably get mired down in conversations about operations, right? But at the same time, while you're doing that, you have another responsibility to start doing this relationship building on the side. So, we call it positions of greater responsibility because I have a greater expectation that you're doing more than just leading the PAICs, you're developing relationships with the local park service.
Operations part, in my opinion, is easy.
Right.
That's we train people from day one how to be an operator.
We've got that market cornered.
Absolutely.
Right? It's the other markets.
It's the other stuff, building relationships, learning how to talk to people, listening, hearing their side of the story, all those different things to understand their perspective.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's a great tale for folks that are trying to, like I said, aspiring to be upper leaders in the organization. Like you have more responsibility means we expect more out of you.
Absolutely.
That kind of thing. So this is where you go to Big Bend.
Yes. Yeah. Well, prior to becoming the division chief. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you get the opportunity to go serve as the acting deputy chief patrol agent for the Big Bend sector for 120?
90 days.
90 days?
90 days, yeah.
So how was that? Coming from San Diego.
Yeah, so I went from RGV to San Diego, then to Big Bend, and Big Bend was not like either of those places. Beautiful, remote. Mm-hmm. The nearest Walmart, we define civilization by Walmarts, is an hour and a half away from where I am staying the majority of the time. So you drive into Marfa, Texas, and it's very old cowboy town, small town, little tiny hardware store, little tiny grocery store. I'm not going to find my pumpkin spice creamer at the grocery store. I've got to make my own, right? Yeah. So I get there, and the acting chief at the time, basically called me up out of the blue and said, "Hey, I was looking at your resume, or not my bio, and you have all the experience we're looking for this detail. Can you come in and just kind of look at things, see how they're going, teach some people something?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." It was at a point in time where I was having a bit of a personal situation. I'd had a miscarriage, and I was looking for an opportunity to just kind of go somewhere else, do something different, get away. So I was like, heck yes, let me call my husband. Mind you, he's on detail.
Oh, my goodness.
At the time, our daughter is sophomore, junior, can't remember right now. So have some really good friends. This is where connections in the Border Patrol comes in, right? And there's a 3-week period where neither one of us is going to be home. Okay. So our daughter goes and stays with them. This is at the end of summer, so she doesn't have school. So she goes and stays with them for 3 months. Great friends, wonderful people. They love her. She loves them. And so that part's taken care of. I don't need to worry about it. And my kid is she's an introvert. She's not going to go party or get in trouble or anything like that. I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And Ryan is now switching out and coming home. So I get to Big Bend, and I'm starting to meet people. I've been in San Diego for a couple of years now, and I'm kind of used to the culture there. And I get to Big Bend, and it's like back to basics. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm like, I like this.
Yeah.
Like, I really like this. I'm going to implement some of these things when I get back to San Diego. Sure I am. And I get an opportunity to work with their professional staff, their lawyers. They're all very, very close because a lot of them are from that area, so they know each other. The community is small. And I get an opportunity to work with some really great folks out there who probably haven't gotten the deserved attention that they should because they're in Big Bend, and it's, the bastard child of the Border Patrol. It's considered a smaller sector, but they have the most mileage of the over 525 miles of border area, a lot of which is inaccessible because of the Big Bend National Park there, but still just hardworking, like good old Border Patrol work is still going on in Big Bend sector. And so I'm the main disciplinarian for the sector. And I take a little bit different perspective when I'm working with the union and the lawyers and stuff. I'm a big fan of last chance agreements. Big fan. Like, it's on you at that point. So I take the opportunity at that time to kind of do my own thing and build a good, I guess, reputation for being fair. When it comes to that type of stuff. So great 90 days, met people I'll never forget, still keep in contact with a lot of people down there. And I am now a huge advocate for Big Bend sector.
I love that. That's Big Bend is to your point, it oftentimes gets overlooked or cast aside, but what they do with what they have is impressive.
Yeah.
It really
and
is.
they had kind of gotten to a point, some of the PICs, that they just kind of gave up asking because they always got told no.
Yeah.
I said, I worked with them on their budget justifications, on, building that language that makes sense. And then one thing I told that came back to me later was, I said, if you want to be treated like a big sector, you need to act like a big sector.
You've been there.
Yeah. So
that's awesome. So you go back to San Diego, and you're on the move again.
Now I'm going to be,
You go up to headquarters.
Yeah.
As the?
Associate Chief over the, I think, Ops West.
Yeah. Ops West, but you do that for about 4 seconds.
Yeah.
And you become the
acting deputy for Ops.
Acting deputy chief for the Law Enforcement Operations Directorate, working directly for the chief. This is the B3 position, the chief of the Operations Directorate. Tell me about that time. Our paths circle back again.
We circle back again. Yes. So I got there in December, and the pandemic hit.
Yes, ma'am.
The pandemic hit. So we're like, what is this pandemic? I don't, never in my life, we got to wear masks. I don't understand. And then Title 42, the CDC authority to expel people comes in. We've got to come up with this plan, like how we're going to execute and all this kind of stuff. And the whole entire border is changing, and it goes quiet for about 5 minutes, right? In the larger scheme of things, but it's still, there's a lot of demands from the White House at this time. I'm attending, briefs in the Situation Room where I'm having to brief Steve Miller, who was not an easy man to talk to or to convince that we're doing everything we can. At that time, we were down to like 1,000 apprehensions a day nationwide.
Yeah.
And they're like, what more can we do? I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah. I don't know what more we can do. Like, I think maybe this is the acceptable level, right? Considering we
This may be the floor.
Yeah, this may be the floor, considering we apprehended over 2 million last year. So it's just another time of challenges and 2 o'clock in the morning phone calls and managing that. And, my daughter's away at college now, so I'm not super worried about what she's doing. I can focus a large part of my time on my career at this point and really being there for the people. Like that I think is the point where probably when I was a division chief too, where I started to realize really the impact that the mission and the stress has on people. Yeah. And how every time there's a call at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's not a good call.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're getting up and you're taking notes and you're calling someone else, and it's not going to be a fun conversation.
For sure. We talked about where our paths circle back. I was at the White House. In my detail there, I come back, I backfill you as Ops West Associate Chief, and this is the first time I think I actually start working for you. We kind of had paralleled some things along the way from 2010 and beyond. But I tell this story often that, not because you're sitting here in front of me, but I really appreciate, and this is probably a maturation over time too for you, right? But I really appreciate your style. Arguably one of my most favorite leaders I've ever worked for, because you would say, hey, Ryan, I need you to do X by Monday. Didn't matter what day it was. 10-4, got it. What didn't happen after that is, okay, now it's, 3 days earlier, like, hey, Ryan, you done with X? No, you said Monday. If I can get it to you faster, I will. Like that type of thing. That wasn't happening. You gave us the task, right? You had this expectation that we would complete it. We were prioritizing it. It was coming from you. Therefore, everything else kind of took a back burner, and you never really, were breathing down anybody's neck to get something done. And you, the way
no one could ever say I'm a micromanager.
Never micromanaged. And I think a lot of it's, I felt like you trusted us.
Yeah, you've got to have that.
Right.
And we had a great team up there, too.
I would put that team up against anybody. Yeah. It was a tremendous team. Yeah. And the trust that we had to. Like, to your point, we're dealing with stuff, like, it seems like every day we're dealing with a new thing, but never dealt with a pandemic, never dealt with Title 42, never dealt with
we're still having
rioting.
Deaths in custody. Right. We're, agents committing suicide, line of duty, all the other stuff that's going on top of a pandemic, on top of riots. The whole nation was just in an uproar. Yeah.
It was a tremendous learning experience for all of us, and I'm happy to have been in the trenches with you doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. From there, you get an opportunity. You promote to a senior executive in the organization.
Yeah.
But once again, it's outside of Border Patrol.
It is.
What was that?
Operation Support Planning, Analysis, and Requirements Evaluation. So when I read the job announcement for that job, planning, I'm like, wow, that fits right into my little niche, right? And I thought I can definitely do that. Yeah. And I kept it a secret. I didn't tell very many people that I applied for it. I certainly didn't tell people when I got the interview. I didn't tell people when I got the second interview and the third interview. I don't think I really told anyone until I had an EOD. Yeah. And we had this joke, I don't know if you remember, within our little division there, that Mom was going out for cigarettes. Yeah. And she wasn't coming back.
That's right.
This time. Yes. So it was a point in my career where I felt like I wanted to do something. And there had been a couple years where I would come to work some days and just be like, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. And it wasn't the people or the organization. It was the job, the demands, the unreasonable sort of demands, I guess, at that point. Yeah. I dealt with some depression and anxiety and a lot of stress, and I needed to find a way to make myself, I guess, feel like I was still bringing value to the organization, but I didn't need to be the one putting out the fires anymore.
Yeah. I guess probably what we felt. Like, hey, I trust my team. Yeah. None of us were overloaded, that type of thing. But, I remember the joke well. Remember who came up with it. The irony here is, going back to the former point, we really enjoyed that time. So for you to be leaving and never coming back stung a little bit, but we understood. But you go off and do that, and I remember you saying I was like, hey, is this it? And you're like, never say never, right?
Right.
I don't think I'm ever going to come back in uniform, for example, but I'm not closing any doors either, right? And you do pair for a little bit, and then you come back into your current role, and that's the XD of Mission Support Directorate.
Correct.
What led to that?
That I was not enjoying the person I was working for, and it was very opportunistic, actually. I'd had a discussion with that individual, and then the chief asked me to come and talk to him. And he had a couple opportunities open, and I said, you know what, maybe I'd like to do that one. And so I came back to the Border Patrol.
Nice.
And I felt like this is an area where I've focused some of my attention throughout my career in taking care of people.
Yeah.
And it just boils down to me now having the influence and leverage to put some things in place that before I leave the organization finally, I hope to have so that the agents will have options and feel that are supported, and that the organization does care.
Yeah. So mission support, you have a couple major veins, right?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Budget.
Money, right?
Yeah.
Budget.
Huge.
What does that look like? This is what I'm talking for all U.S. Border Patrol.
Right.
What's our annual budget?
So we have about a $5 billion, $6 billion budget.
More or less, right?
Yeah.
Pretty big deal.
Pretty big deal.
Big deal, right? Equally big, you have all what I'll characterize as agent support underneath you.
Right.
That's the whole gamut of things that we do.
Right.
Operators, we see a nail, we hammer it, right?
Right.
Got it,
Right.
PMOD, infrastructure.
They give you the things.
They give us the things, right?
But they come to me for the money.
They come to you,
give you the things.
right? That's where I'm going with this. Everything ties, SPAD, policy, modernization, requirements, those types of things cost money, right? You always have to come back to, you can have all the greatest ideas in the world, and you can want to modernize or enhance readiness all day long, but can we afford it? Right. Is it budgeted for? There is a process. I can hear the other Scudder, Chief Scudder, talking to me at length about process. So a lot of that, and budget process, just as an example, that's a 2-year process.
It's a 4 to 5 year process.
Yeah, you're not touching money for at least 2 years, but you got to start budgeting. If I wanted something in 23, I'm thinking about that in 18, 19.
Yes.
Right? So it's hard, this is hard for some folks who aren't as broad and deep over time, haven't taken a turn in the barrel in DC or a couple turns in the barrel in DC. They don't understand that. Yes, I would love to give you the $1 million of whatever you requested.
But guess who I'm going to have to go to for that? Congress.
That's right.
And they do not make it easy.
Right. Exactly. So this is a no BS job. Is what I'm saying.
This is way out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Way out of my comfort zone. The budget stuff, particularly.
Yeah, it all hinges on what you guys do in that shop.
Yes.
I mean, everything.
Yeah.
So, how's that going?
It's going well. I have a really great team.
Yeah.
I have a great team. And my deputy is amazing.
Yeah.
Super smart. She really kind of took the reins at a point where a lot of staff kind of walked away.
Yep.
And it was on her.
Yeah.
And she's built a really good internal process and a really good team.
Yeah.
I couldn't ask for a better team. They all really, really are devoted to their particular areas.
Yeah.
And they get it.
Yeah.
They really get it.
Yeah, I mean, even at the Border Patrol Academy, I'm in the Office of Training and Development within CBP, so I'm even outside of Border Patrol technically. If I need something, I still have to go back to the Mission Support Directorate and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I still need
give you money too.
Give us money. Border Patrol pays for their own training. Right? So OTD doesn't get appropriated for training. When this is why you and I specifically are in constant communication, because I have to pay for Border Patrol Basic. We had this new thing called Border Patrol Processing Coordinators that kind of ebbs and flows, requirements go up and down.
Which, by the way, wasn't planned for in the cycle of the budget, so we had to work that in somewhere along the way.
Absolutely. So these are the types of the decisions where you're kind of the inject point. Like, I'm not going to Chief Ortiz for those conversations.
Right.
I'm going to XD Scudder.
He's going to come to me.
Right. He's going to be like, why are you calling me, bro?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
you're going to call Kathy anyway.
Yeah.
So it is quite the job. I'm really, really happy that you're in there leading it, both in terms of the expansion of the budget, but also your acumen for leading people. I think that's a heck of a opportunity for you, and the Border Patrol is probably better off for it, for sure. Can you just give me an example? I think I kind of want to hear a little bit about the child care, kind of going back to that, just as an example of what kind of the inject point of MSD does, but how you overlay your experiences both professionally and personally into something that matters for CBP.
Right. So it really started out like we historically complain about, especially females, about, childcare and the way the organization operates and how difficult it is to find childcare on shifts.
Yep.
Or midnights, or if you are in a remote area where you don't have family support. So this started out as a grassroots sort of initiative with 5 or 6 ladies who we had been talking, and finally someone just said, we need to stop talking about it and do something about it. And I'm like, sign me up. I'm on board. I was not the initiator of it, but I did want to be a part of it. And then I had opportunities to influence because of my position and my reputation in areas where those folks maybe didn't have that influence or didn't know somebody. So started out as grassroots. Border Patrol worked on a bunch of stuff. We did surveys. The ladies put together, we probably met like once a month or so. Then C1 comes to a muster. Mm-hmm. And it gets brought up to him, and he's like, tells his staffer, I want this to be a thing, set up a Tiger team. So it starts rolling into a CBP initiative. Yeah. And I'm the one who's tagged to participate on the CBP work group. So it eventually turns into different things. We have lots of ideas, could we do like a child care facility like DOD does at one of our facilities or nearby? Right. Could we contract? Can we, do nanny services? Like, what are our options? So it turns into discussions about the amount of money people make and how they then can qualify for the CBP caregiver supplement. And it's too low. Yeah. The qualification amount is too low. So we get that raised. So far more people, especially in the frontline levels, are now eligible to take part of that.
That's great.
And then just recently, actually, the commissioner has been speaking to us about the 2030 initiative. Yeah. Or the 30 by 30, which is 30% females in law enforcement by 2030. And one of the major factors that comes up every single time we have this conversation, to not to get females into the organization, but to keep them, is childcare. Because, like it or not, gender roles, whatever, females tend to be the primary caregivers for their kids. Yep. Period. And we want to, for the most part. Sure. At least I always did. Yeah. But childcare is now, so they're asking us to dig back into all of our old work. I'm like, all right, I still have the slide presentations. Yeah. I have everything. I have the names of everyone that was involved previously. So they're pushing forward again to see if we can do more.
That's awesome.
Because when things leave Border Patrol, a lot of times it gets watered down, or, well, what can we do? And, and then administrations change and we lose focus. Yeah. But this is one of those things that, with people in different positions now, I can name probably 5 of the work group members that are in higher level positions now that are participating in this next effort.
That's awesome. So it's an outstanding initiative. You guys did a tremendous amount of work at the grassroots level that's now maturing. The thing I like about it is that, you can almost consider it, lucky that you had this opportunity, this inflection point where the commissioner's like this. Absolutely. Hey, this is going to be a thing, right? But I always say that luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
It's
right?
somebody
for it.
Well, it's somebody having the courage to stand up and muster and say, hey, Commissioner, this is a problem, and this is what we're doing about it. What are you going to do
There's the opportunity. But you were prepared to act when the commissioner said, okay,
absolutely,
let's do it.
Right.
So I love that. The other thing about the 30 by 30, is if I'm behind it, right? It's a great initiative. But the thing you mentioned right now is like you have to really identify what are the impediments are. Yes. Right? You can't just be like, oh, I'm not going to touch that. That's something we shouldn't talk about or whatever. Right. No, we have no problem getting women into the organization. Right. We don't. It's keeping them. Right. That's the issue, 100%. So, and to your point, I'm in a Border Patrol family myself.
Right.
She would prefer her to raise the kids than me. Probably not a bad idea.
No offense.
Yeah, right. But it's we're lucky to keep folks like you all. But some folks walk away too, right? So how can we just do better at that, at a minimum?
So I think a lot of that feeds into sort of the agent support program.
Absolutely.
Peer support, just general mobility options.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity this last year to speak at several different women's events, which I never thought I would enjoy public speaking, but I do enjoy those types of things where, we have an opportunity to kind of share some wisdom. I guess I'm wise now.
Yeah.
I think I am. But it was an opportunity for me to learn also. Like, that's a huge part of all those things. And we talked about equality versus equity.
Okay.
So equality means opportunities are equal. Equity means taking into consideration all the circumstances that that individual is dealing with to give them that equal or equitable chance. That it's, if you are a single parent, don't even have to be a single mom. Obviously, we have plenty of single dads out there.
Absolutely do.
You're a single parent who, can't find child care on a midnight shift. What do you do?
Yeah.
Like, we don't have childcare available for you unless you want to hire a nanny.
Right.
There are many services, and I've used them all. So if anyone ever wants to know what the multitude of different childcare services are available to you, just give me a call. Yeah. We literally used everything.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's really encouraging to hear that you understand the bigger problem. Like, sure, we can get them on board, but what are we doing in the middle?
Do we really care that much about our people? If we do, we should do what we can to take care of them.
100%. That's why you're perfectly positioned in agent support or mission support directorate with that owns agent support. So glad to have you on board doing that. But we are in the What's Important Now podcast. Okay. Right? So I would like to hear from the XD of MSD at headquarters. What are the 3 or 4 things that are really vitally important to you right now? What keeps you up at night? And the floor is yours.
So the people. I don't have 3 or 4 things. I have one, and it's taking care of our people.
Love it.
As you know, suicide is at an all-time high in our organization. Mental health has become a real challenge for our people. PTSD. I'm in touch with an agent that I worked with in the past that is having the most extreme case of PTSD I've ever seen in my life. And this guy was, spec ops, all that kind of hard charger, always out there answering the call nonstop. And just one day, his body said, no more.
Yeah.
We have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of each other. We have to ask questions. You have to know your people to know when something is wrong. You can't, I always tell this story, especially to new supervisors. I was a new supervisor. I was the only female that was promoted. There was one other female supervisor at my station, and I thought I had to show them I meant business, right? Yeah. I'm young. I'm not even 30 yet, and I have this agent on my shift, and I'm on midnights, and he's just disappearing. I don't hear from him. He doesn't answer the call. I go and look for him, and he's racked out. I'm like, he's a slug. He's not performing. I'm going to ding him on his PWP, right? So I try to, and my FOS says, no, you can't do that. That's like a fail. I'm like, but he's failing. It's like, no, we don't do that, blah, blah, blah. So I give him his PWP, and I don't think anything about it. What I did not do was ask him, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's going on in your life? What's changed? 6 months later, he committed suicide. And I will forever regret not having a conversation with him. But at least I've learned that early in my career so that now it's a lesson for me, but it's a lesson I can pass on to others so they don't have to experience that as well. My husband was the FOS on his shift when he committed suicide, and he responded. So, it's weird how these things connect, but the most important thing always, not just now, is our people. Yeah. Knowing them and taking care of them.
I love it. I think, having that central to any command, whether it's MSD, the Academy, RGV, El Paso, doesn't really matter, should be all of our charge.
Absolutely.
honestly. So, Chief, well, I'll always know you as Chief, XD Scudder, thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for mentoring this latest class that graduated today. And thank you for all that you do as the XD of MSD.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thanks. With that, honor first.